Ladies and gentlemen, capital G here, and we've arrived, deck number 3 in my Dune Trilogy, House Corrino. House Corrino in the books was led by, well, the head honcho of the whole empire, Emperor Shaddam IV. So naturally, the Magic the Gathering equivalent to Emperor Shaddam IV is Grand Arbiter Augustin IV. Couldn't be helped. Azorius, it's not just the fact that they're both the fourth in their line. Azorius perfectly represents what the Carinos are about: political control, well-managed wealth, well-managed resources, dictating the rules. I mean, it's all there. So I definitely had to focus more on ideology rather than characters. I had to do some digging to find the characters for this deck, and I ended up going with only 5, and 3 of them, as you can see, are Bene Gesserit, or Planeswalkers. So let's see the other human creature that we have here, and that is Mangara the Diplomat. He is my stand-in for Hasimir Fenring. A white and 3 gives us a 2/4 with lifelink. And hey, we get rewarded whenever an opponent attacks us with 2 more creatures, or whenever an opponent casts their second spell each turn. We get to draw cards, continuing to give us resources based on what everyone else is doing. 3 Planeswalkers. So let us start with Narset Transcendent. I picked Narset as my Princess Irulan. Princess Irulan ended up marrying Paul Atreides at the end of the book. It was a purely political marriage. There's no romance here. Purely political. And it was in doing so that Paul became the Emperor at the end of Dune. So spoilers if you've not read the book, but there you go. As for the abilities, it's more for the character than for the abilities. I like the art for Narset, and it does represent something very princessy, shall we say, in the context of the Dune universe. And she's still useful. I mean, our plus ability: look at the top card of our library. If it's a non-creature, non-land, we may reveal it and put it in our hand, or we can -2 to cast our next give our next instant or sorcery spell that we cast from our hand a rebound. Rebound, of course, meaning that we get to cast it again at the beginning of the next upkeep. And -9 is we get an emblem if your opponents can't cast non-creature spells. If we ever get to that point, we should have already won the game by then, just saying. Serra the Benevolent. This is my Margaret Fenring, wife of Mangara. Again, perfect fit here. White, and 2 gives us 4 loyalty Planeswalker. Creatures we control with flying get +1/+1 until end of turn. We can create a Serra Angel by going with -3, and -6 says we get an emblem with, if you control a creature, damage that reduces your life total to less than 1 reduces it to 1 instead. So a warship effect. And I've got Tamiyo, the Moon Sage, representing the TheGaius, Helen, Mohaim. Helen Mohaim is the TheGaius, or the head of the Bene Gesserit, and of course plays a very important role with the House Carino as well. And we've got 3 generic and double blue for 4 loyalty Planeswalker. She can tap down permanents and they don't untap during their controller's next untap step. That's the +1. -2 says draw a card for each tapped creature target player controls, so can draw us a bunch of cards. And that -8, we get an emblem if we have no maximum hand size, and whenever a card is put into our graveyard from anywhere, return it to our hand. Now that would be a very, very powerful ultimate if we ever get there. But before we get there, let's talk about our trinkets and ways of building up our board. And as I've been doing with this whole series, other than a couple of occasional cards, I'm not really going to explain the Vorthos reasons why I've chosen each. Azorius Locket, of course, taps 4 colors, and you can also pay 4 mana in combination of white and blue to sack this Locket and draw 2 cards. The Signet for the quick ramp. I'm running the M12 Crown of Empires. So for 2 mana we get an artifact, we can pay 3, tap this to tap down a creature, and we gain control of that creature instead if we control all 3 Empires artifacts. So all 3 are here. We'll go more in depth on those when I get to them. Cultivator's Caravan. I'm actually running a bunch of vehicles. If there's anyone who is well equipped and well situated to own powerful and useful vehicles, it would in fact be the Carinos. So Cultivator's Caravan, it's a 5/5 caravan basically. Or we could use this to add mana of any color to our mana pool. Demolition Stomper. Takes a lot to crew this thing, but it's a 10/7, and it can't be blocked by creatures with power 2 or less. It is a very aggressive piece of equipment. The Heart of Kirin. 2 mana for a 4/4 flying and vigilance, but we still need 3 power to crew it. Or we can move a loyalty counter from a planeswalker we control to crew it. The Paralian 2, the flagship. We get this out and we can start crewing this thing consistently. Our opponents are going down because this thing, if it gets going, best thing you can do is shuffle up and play your next game. Peace Walker Colossus. It's a vehicle, but it has the ability to animate our other vehicles, so I thought it was a good fit here. The Scepter of Empires. This says tap, deal 1 damage to target player. It deals 3 damage to that player instead if you control artifacts named Crown of Empires and Throne of Empires. The Sky Sovereign. This enters the battlefield or attacks. It deals 3 damage to target creature or planeswalker an opponent controls, and it's pretty easy to crew. Only 3 power needed to crew it. Sol Ring. The Talisman of Progress for the mana ramp, of course. And Throne of Empires, the last of the Empire artifacts. 1 mana tap, put a 1/1 soldier token onto the battlefield. We get 5 of those tokens instead if we control all 3 Empire artifacts. And of course, Weatherlight. 4/5 flying. When this deals combat damage to a player, look at our top 5 cards. Reveal a historic card from among them, put into our hand. Historics are artifacts, planeswalkers, and legendaries. I think we have just enough to justify running the Weatherlight, and it's also a good. She's also a good ship. Moving on to our creatures with Alms Collector. A 3/4 with flash, and if opponent would draw 2 more cards, instead we and that player each draw 1 card. So somebody's like, I'm drawing 5 cards. You drop this down and be like, nope, we're drawing 1 card each. The Ascended Law Mage. 4 mana gives us a 3/2 with flying and hexproof, and 3 is what activates a lot of our vehicles, so thought the hexproof was worth it. Azorius Arrestor. Being able to detain a creature an opponent controls, which means they can't attack, block, or use activated abilities. Just for the 1 turn. Azorius Guildmage. I like the utility here. Double blue to cast it, and it's white and 2 to tap down a creature, or blue and 2 to counter an activated ability. Canal Courier. Thought this was cool. When this enters the battlefield, you become the Monarch, and yes, we are going to be introducing the Monarch with several cards in this deck. And when Canal Courier and another creature attack different players, Canal Courier cannot be blocked. Cloud Blazer is here, comes down, it's a 2/2 flyer, but we gain 2 life and draw 2 cards. Containment Priest, if this would enter the battle... This has flash, and if a non-token creature would enter the battlefield and it wasn't cast, it's exiled instead. Dranith Magistrate, also known as Commander Riker. I like to call him Commander Riker, although he did not play a role in Dune, clearly. He's a Star Trek character. But that's just the look I get when I see him. He looks exactly like Commander Riker. Anyways, flavor fails aside, very, very useful card. And of course, there'd be Magistrates working in House Carino. The Elite Guard Mage. 4 mana gives us a 2/3 flyer. When this enters the battlefield, we gain 3 life and we get to draw a card. The Imposing Sovereign. Creatures our opponents control enter the battlefield tapped. Jubilant Skybonder is here. Creatures we control with flying are more expensive to target. Let's go with that. They are more expensive for our opponents to target. Judge's Familiar. Because of course they'd have little messenger birds. 1/1 flying, and we can always sacrifice this to counter an instant or sorcery spell unless its controller pays that 1 more mana. Knight of the White Orchid, of course there'd be knights and soldiers, so let's play Knight of the White Orchid and get a little bit of ramp. Law Rune Enforcer. I always thought this was useful. 1 mana to tap down a creature with converted mana cost 2 or greater. What you're paying to get this guy out and active is way less than what your opponents invest in order to get their big beaters on the board. Order of the Stars. It's a 0/1 for 1 white. Doesn't seem so great, but when this comes into play, we get to choose a color, and Order of the Stars has protection from that color, so they can block. If you choose green, they can block green creatures indefinitely. The Palace Familiar. Whenever this dries, draw a card. That's a 1/1 flyer. Palace Guard. 1/4 can block any number of creatures. Palace Jailer. Another way to introduce the Monarch. White and 2 for this 2/2. And when this enters the battlefield, exile target creature an opponent controls until an opponent becomes the Monarch. Palace Sentinels. When this enters the battlefield, we become the Monarch. It's also a 2/4 human soldier. Pentarch Paladin. Triple white and 2 for this 3/3 with flanking. So you can take down creatures bigger than 3/3 if it swings. We choose a color when it comes into play, and then it gains the ability of white tap, destroy target permanent of the chosen color. That's any permanent, folks. Planeswalker, creature, artifact. As long as it's whatever color we choose, we can destroy it. Protector of the Crown. 2/5. This enters the battlefield, become the Monarch, and we can have all damage that would be dealt to us dealt to Protector of the Crown instead. Doesn't even have to block it all, but it can take it all for us. Reflector Mage, because of course the house would have access to mages that can do this kind of thing for them. When this enters the battlefield, return a creature an opponent controls to its owner's hand. That creature's owner can't cast spells of the same name as that creature until our next turn. Studded Guild Mage. Just a little useful here. White tap, gain 2 life, or blue tap, draw a card, then discard a card. And a 2/2 for 2 mana. Right on curve. Soldier of the Pantheon. 1 mana for this 2/1 with protection from multicolored. And whenever an opponent casts a multicolored spell, we gain a life. The Throne Warden. At the beginning of our end step, if we are the Monarch, he gets a 1/1 counter. Moving on to enchantments with active authority. When this comes into the battlefield, we can exile an artifact or enchantment. And then at the beginning of our upkeep, we can exile an artifact or enchantment, but by doing so, its controller gains control of active authority. And on the topic of authority, authority of the consuls. Creatures our opponents control enter the battlefield tapped, and whenever a creature enters the battlefield under an opponent's control, we gain a life. Land tax. Of course we would. As long as we have fewer lands than our opponents, go get 3 of them. 3 basics into our hand. Smothering Tithe, because again, of course, the House Carino would impose taxes. Steel of the Godhead. This is going to help us go on offense a little bit. For 3 mana, 2 generic and 1 Azoria, so a white or a blue. As long as the enchanted creature is white, it gets +1/+1 and lifelink. As long as that creature is blue, it's +1/+1 and unblockable. Unquestioned Authority also helps with this. When this enters the battlefield, we get to draw a card, and an enchanted creature has protection from creatures. Moving on to instants, the classic EDH staple, Cryptic Command, will make its presence known here. Disallow as well, one of the best counter spells. Counters a spell, an activated ability, or triggered ability. Very few straight up counter spells have this kind of flexibility. Classic disenchant, destroy target artifact or enchantment. Apparently getting a reprint in Zendikar Rising. Emergency powers. Again, of course, House Carino would have the powers to, change the rules at a whim. So for 7 mana, what this instant does, each player shuffles their hand and graveyard into the library, they draw 7 cards. Emergency powers would then be exiled. But if we cast this spell on our main phase, we also get to put a permanent card with converted mana cost 7 or less from our hand onto the battlefield. How sweet is that? Enlightened Tutor searches our library for an artifact or enchantment. Reveal it, put it on our library. We do want those Empire artifacts. That is one of the goals of the deck, is to try and get all 3 up and running. They're not super powerful even if we get all 3. But I think it'd be cool to get it going and just win the game that way. Long-term plans. Like I said, not a lot of tutor options for artifacts in Azorius colors, so long-term plans will help us with that. Muddle the Mixture. It will go get, it can counter instant or sorcery spell, or it can go get something else for us with the transmute ability. Ray of Command. Just out of nowhere on top of creature an opponent controls, gain control of it until end of turn. And then, yeah. Unbreakable Formation. Creatures we control gain indestructible until end of turn, and if it's our turn, or our main phase, all those creatures will get +1/+1 and Vigilance. The Corrino army is in fact very powerful, and Unbreakable Formation definitely reminds us of this fact. Onto instants, and so onto our split card. One side's an instant, one side's a sorcery. Warrant, put target attacking or blocking creature on top of its owner's library. Take away a card draw, take away an attacker, why not? And Warden, create a 4/4 white and blue Sphinx creature token with flying and vigilance. On to lands, we're running 36 lands, including the Atakar Wastes, the Azorius Chancery, Guildgate Command Beacon, because, let's face it, our commander will be targeted and targeted hard, so Command Beacon is going to help us keep him affordable. Command Tower, Desert of the Mindfall, and Desert of the True are both here to remind us of what the stakes are. 13 islands, 1 Aboro Palace in the Clouds. Running 12 planes and Prav Spires of the Order. Running a Sajiri Refuge for that point of life gain, and Throne of the High City, another way to become the monarch. Yeah, here's another possible win condition. Stall of the game through life gain, and then boom, Approach of the Second Sun. So how how this works, 1 white and 6. If Approach of the Second Sun was cast from our hand, and we've cast another spell named Approach of the Second Sun this game, we win. Otherwise, put this 7 from the top of our library and gain 7 life. So, we only get the 1 copy in Commander, but if we manage to cast it twice, the game is over. Fabricate lets us search our library for an artifact card, reveal it, and put it into our hand. Excellent tutor. Tariff. Each player chooses a creature of the highest converted mana cost they control, then pays mana equal to that cost or sacrifices the creature. Black in the Zendikar Rising, I forget the name of the card, but it's getting a similar thing. It's a 3 mana instant, and there's no chance of paying the mana to save your most expensive creatures or planeswalkers. But it's a destroy effect rather than a sacrifice effect, which could be relevant in some cases. That's the black version. But this one I like because, this gets Colossus. This can hit Colossi. I've taken down 2 Colossi in the same turn with this. Speaking of taking creatures down, Time Wipe. Excellent board wipe. One of the best in Azorius colors, I think. Because we get to return one of our creatures to our hand and then destroy all other creatures. And on that note, that is our take on House Carino. That is our take on Dune. The trilogy is now complete. And on that note, again, Zendikar Rising spoilers in progress. And right behind those, of course, will be the Commander Legend spoilers. I won't be doing much with those until all the cards are in the system, so that's gonna be it for me for a little while. I have some other business to take care of. So, I will see you in a few weeks. Take care until then, stay safe, and we will see you all again next time. Bye for now.